You've heard that saying, right? Rome wasn't built in a day. And man, is that true. We're talking about a small trading post that, over 2,000 years, grew into a superpower that basically defined the Western world. Its influence is so huge, it's everywhere. You almost don't even see it. So let's really dig into this incredible story.
I mean, think about it. When you hear words like republic, senate, veto, you're speaking Roman. The way our buildings look, the way we think, even the words we use, it all goes back to them. It's the bedrock of our world today. And get this, at its peak, 1 in every 5 people on the entire planet was Roman. That's just mind-boggling.
So yeah, that's the big question, right? The one we're going to tackle in this explainer. How on earth did one city rise up to rule the world for over 2,000 years and then just collapse? It's this epic story full of myths, brutal conquests, absolute genius, and, yeah, a whole lot of madness. Let's get into it. Okay, so to figure out how it all ended, we've got to go way back to the beginning. And Rome's origin story? Well, it's wrapped up in this amazing legend, long before historians could come in and set the record straight. The myth is just wild. You've got these twin boys, Romulus and Remus, supposedly sons of the god of war. They get thrown out to die, but get this, they're saved and raised by a she-wolf. Eventually, Romulus kills his brother and founds the city. It's an incredible story, but the reality is a little less dramatic. Archaeologists have found it was really just a small trading post on the Tiber River. This little settlement was ruled by a bunch of kings, but they weren't like your typical kings. They didn't inherit the throne. Nope, they were actually elected by a council called the Senate. Well, that whole king thing, it didn't last. The very last king, a guy they called Tarquin the Proud, was a total tyrant. His family's abuses got so bad that the people finally had enough. They staged this massive revolt and kicked him out for good. And in its place, the Romans created something totally new for the time, a republic. The idea was a government run by the people, for the people, all centered around the Senate. All right, so with this new government in place, Rome started looking beyond its own walls. And this next era was all about relentless, brutal expansion. We're talking about a period that brought in unimaginable wealth and power. And it also gave rise to the one man who would end up breaking the very system that made him. For more than 100 years, Rome was locked in this epic, life-or-death fight with its biggest rival, Carthage. This was the Punic Wars. You had Rome going up against the legendary General Hannibal, one of the greatest military minds ever. After 2 incredibly bloody wars, Rome finally got control of the Western Mediterranean. But, that was enough for them. In the 3rd and final war, Rome didn't just win. They annihilated Carthage. They burned the city to the ground. Its people killed or sold into slavery. Just total destruction. So all that victory brought in tons of land and money, but it also created some massive fatal problems. See, the Republic was designed to run a city, not a giant empire, and it just started to crack under the pressure. All this new money was flowing to the rich elites, the patricians, while the common folk, the plebeians, got left behind. Corruption was rampant. Political assassinations, that became the new normal. You had these powerful generals with private armies who were loyal to them, not to Rome. It was a recipe for disaster, and the Republic was just constantly getting torn apart by one brutal civil war after another. And right out of all that chaos walks one of the most famous names in all of history, Julius Caesar. This guy was the whole package, a brilliant general, an amazing politician, and just overflowing with ambition. He looked at the weak, crumbling republic and thought, yeah, I can take that. And his path to power was just paved with blood. He led the Gallic Wars, conquering the area we now call France. And the numbers, according to the historian Plutarch, are just staggering. His armies killed 1 million Gauls and enslaved another million. This incredibly brutal campaign made him a superstar back in Rome, but to the Senate, he was becoming a massive threat. So Caesar comes back to Rome, not as a hero serving the Republic, but as its new master. He basically forced them to name him dictator for life. The Senate was terrified he was about to declare himself king. So, on the Ides of March, a group of them, including his own friend Brutus, cornered him right there on the Senate floor and stabbed him to death 23 times. Those famous last words, et tu Brute? You too, Brutus? Just heartbreaking. But here's the thing. Killing him didn't save the Republic. It did the exact opposite. It sealed its fate. Yeah, the assassins totally failed. Caesar's murder just kicked off another round of horrible civil war. And when all the fighting was finally over, the Republic was gone for good. In its place stood one man. A new era had begun, the age of the emperors. And that man was Caesar's adopted son, a guy named Octavian.
He crushed all his rivals and was given a new name, Augustus. And as the very first Roman emperor, he did something incredible. He ended the civil wars. He brought in a 200-year period of peace and prosperity called the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. And he ruled for an amazing 41 years.
But what happened after Augustus? Well, it really shows you the dark side of giving one person all that power. His family, the Julio-Claudian dynasty, was a real mixed bag. I mean, you had some decent rulers, sure, but you also had total psychopaths like Caligula, who was just unbelievably cruel. And of course, Nero, a name that pretty much just means evil tyrant. The cracks were already starting to show.
And that brings us to that famous saying, right? Nero fiddled while Rome burned. So during his reign, this huge fire just tears through the city. Now, he probably didn't literally play a fiddle. They hadn't even been invented. But the story stuck because people felt like he did nothing to stop it. And to get the blame off himself, he pointed the finger at a small, growing religious group, the early Christians.
Nero's train wreck of a reign ended with his own suicide. And, you guessed it, that threw Rome right back into chaos. It was called the Year of the Four Emperors. And even though things calmed down eventually, the damage was done. This is really the beginning of the end, the long, slow, complicated fall of the Roman Empire. It wasn't one big thing, but more like a death by 1,000 cuts.
And this really shows you just how bad things got. There was this period called the Crisis of the Third Century, and it was just a spiral of violence and chaos. In about 100 years, Rome had more than 25 different emperors. And guess what? Almost every single one of them was murdered. The corruption was just off the charts. I mean, at one point, the emperor's own bodyguards, the Praetorian Guard, killed him and then literally auctioned off the throne to whoever would pay the most. Can you even imagine?
So, to try and get a handle on all this chaos, an emperor named Diocletian came up with a radical idea. He split the empire in two. He figured it was just too big to manage as one piece. So now you have a Western Empire and an Eastern Empire, each with its own ruler. Over time, that split became permanent. The East, which spoke Greek, stayed rich and strong, but the West, which spoke Latin, was just falling apart. It was broke, unstable, and super vulnerable. And when you look weak, people notice. All these different Germanic tribes, who the Romans just lumped together and called barbarians, started pushing on the borders. They looked at the strong, rich East and then at the weak, collapsing West, and well, it was a pretty easy choice where to focus their attacks. So after years of invasions, a ruined economy, and total political breakdown, the end finally came. The year was 476 AD. The very last emperor of the Western Roman Empire, just a young boy, was kicked off the throne by a Germanic general. And here's the final, crazy, poetic twist. The last emperor's name was Romulus, the same name as the mythical founder who started it all.
And just like that, the Western Roman Empire was gone. But was it? Really? When you look around today at our laws, our languages, our governments, even our buildings, you have to wonder. The empire fell, for sure. But did Rome ever truly die?